beautiful day for a little walk up the street.
Welcome back to Steve's World of Wonders.
It's the beginning of June. Nice weather today. It's a cool breeze. Sun is shining. Traffic is kind of noisy. Leaves are rustling. Fire truck. Birds are chirping. I'm on my way to get breakfast at Tim Hortons. Across from the park up here, Dundonald Park. The park up here has a historical marker for a building that's across the street. And we'll check that out, I guess. This has an interesting painting on the front. Poor boy. Have a little walk across to the park here. This is the building here that the marker is for. We'll check out what it says. Igor Gouzenko was a resident at this building across the street. And who was Igor Gouzenko? The Gouzenko Affair, 1945 to 1946. The Gouzenko Affair brought the realities of the emerging Cold War to the attention of the Canadian public. On September 5, 1945, cipher officer Igor Gouzenko left the Soviet embassy with more than 100 documents which exposed the existence of a Soviet spy ring in Canada, with links to others in the United States and Great Britain. His allegations gave rise to the creation in 1946 of a Royal Commission of Inquiry, known as the Kellogg-Tashiro Commission. Its confirmation of the country's vulnerability convinced the federal government to strengthen Canada's national security system. So Igor Gouzenko, who lived across the street from this park, was a Soviet cipher clerk for the Soviet embassy to Canada in Ottawa, and he defected in September of 1945, just 3 days before the end of World War II. He defected, handing over 109 documents on Soviet espionage activities in the West. This event helped to solidify the beginnings of the Cold War. This building and this stretch of street were featured in the movie The Iron Curtain. And there you see Gouzenko's apartment building. 511 Somerset Street West. This panel is erected by the city of Ottawa in recognition of the courage of Igor Gouzenko and his wife Svetlana for their historic flight to freedom in Canada on September 5th, 1945. That night, when Igor Gouzenko left the Soviet embassy on Charlotte Street in Ottawa, he carried 109 carefully selected documents that proved that the Soviet Union was engaged in espionage against its allies. An historic international event, it was to influence foreign policy in Great Britain, the United States, and many other countries around the globe. Gouzenko went to the newsroom of the Ottawa Journal to offer the evidence of Soviet espionage in Canada. Unfortunately, staff rejected what would have been the scoop of the century and suggested Gouzenko return in the morning to go to the RCMP. Gouzenko then approached the offices of the Minister of Justice, Louis Saint Laurent, but he was again told to come back in the morning. He returned home late to 511 Somerset Avenue West and spent an anxious night with his expectant wife and infant son. The next day, September 6, 1945, Gouzenko returned to the offices of the Minister of Justice and to the Ottawa Journal, and was again turned away. Gouzenko knew that his former colleagues at the Soviet embassy would now have noticed his absence and the disappearance of the documents. He knew that the Soviet secret police, the NKVD, would soon be searching for him. No longer safe at home, he pleaded with a neighbor to let him and his family stay the night. During that night, 4 members of the NKVD broke into the Gouzenko's apartment, while Igor and Svetlana watched in terror through their neighbor's keyhole. The NKVD's forcible entry, watched by the Mounties from this park, Dundonald Park, convinced the Canadian authorities that Gouzenko had an important story to tell. On the morning of September 7th, 1945, the RCMP escorted Gouzenko to the Department of Justice. His evidence persuaded the government of the existence of a major Soviet espionage campaign targeting the United States and Great Britain. Gouzenko and his family were taken into protective custody. Eventually, they were sequestered in a safe house at Camp X, a secret military training camp near Oshawa, Ontario. The Gouzenkos were given a new identity in 1947. For the rest of his life, Gouzenko lived by an assumed name under which his family continues to live today. Despite the challenges of living under police protection, in constant fear that the Soviets would track him down, Gouzenko lived a rewarding and creative life. When he died near Toronto in 1982, he knew that he had made the right choice. In our opinion, Gouzenko, by what he has done, has rendered a great public service to the people of this country, and is thereby placed Canada in his debt. Tashiro Kala Commission. Gouzenko with actress who portrayed his wife Svetlana in the film Operation Manhunt. This is a photo of the old Soviet embassy on Charlotte Street in Ottawa. There's a picture of the Soviet embassy.
No more till we get to our flat.
We have a flat?
3 rooms, all our own.
No.
Yes, 3 rooms.
The interior scenes like this one, I believe, were filmed in a studio in Hollywood. This isn't the actual interior of that building. And here's the Tim Hortons that I'm going to right now for breakfast. Should be good. This is a nice park. This is Dundonald Park. Lots of tree coverage here. Very nice. And a playground up here for kids. There's a squirrel. Dundonald Park. Beer store. I have a picture of the old beer store that used to be here. Something being constructed up there. There's a little nice cafe behind it. Nice little park. Breezy day. I'm gonna cross up here in the corner of the park. Benches are painted up. There's Tim's. Street lamp up here. This is the beginnings of Chinatown. Some construction going on. Going in here. Here's a view of the park from across the street. Right over there is where the plaques are, the signs are for this apartment here. This apartment building is the apartment building here. in Somerset. And over here is the park I was in. You can see the signs across the street that I was looking at to mark this building here. So I'm back on the other side of Somerset. There's the Poor House, Poor Boy restaurant and pub, I think. There's Paparazzi's that serves really good calzones. And I'm headed back home after a good breakfast at Tim's. Second fire truck we've seen today. There's that mural again. Nice mural in center town. Outdoor patio beside this building here.
Three passengers from Soviet Russia. They had left Moscow about 1 week before and landed at Fairbanks, Alaska. Were now on their way to Ottawa, the capital of Canada. One of the passengers was Colonel Alexander Trigorin, the new military attaché to the Soviet embassy in Canada. The other was Major Semyon Kulin, his aide and secretary. The third was Igor Gouzenko, a specially trained cipher clerk and decoding expert. It was Gouzenko's first time out of Soviet Russia. As soon as they landed, they were taken to the Soviet embassy, interviewed by Ilya Ronyev, second secretary of the embassy and chief of the NKVD, the Soviet secret police. Ronyev's secretary was extremely friendly to Gouzenko. She had introduced herself to him, offered to help find him an apartment. His first night in Ottawa, they met in front of the Chateau Laurier. They went to a gay restaurant. Gouzenko discovered that Canadians were a happy people, who even in wartime seemed to enjoy themselves.
The stone sign in front of the Canadian National Research Laboratory no longer exists. I guess they tore it down because it's not bilingual.
Jump in, Doctor.
You will receive further instructions within the next few days.
Gouzenko went directly to the Justice Building. Convinced that the information he carried must go to the highest level of government, he was determined to see no one less than the Minister of Justice. Gouzenko was beaten. His story was too big, too incredible. If the Canadian government would not listen, then he had risked everything for nothing.